Greetings folks, and welcome to the third and final part of 8/16/32-bits Halloween Havoc 2023. Now, in today's episode, this is a bit of a look back at the Splatterhouse games. Yes, I know a few years ago I covered Splatterhouse 2 and 3 for Halloween Havoc, but frankly I was never quite satisfied with that video, so here I am doing Splatterhouse 1, 2 and 3. Now I am only looking at the home version of Splatterhouse 1 for the PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16 here, as well as Splatterhouse 2 and Splatterhouse 3 for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Now, Splatterhouse is one of those games. It set a bit of a standard in the 8 and 16-bit era for being a scary, gruesome, gross game, and it was by the standards of the time. Compared to what you get now, of course, it's not that gross, not that gruesome, and not that scary, but it still has its moments. And frankly, I love the Splatterhouse games. They're fun, they're ridiculous, they're silly, they're rock hard, as you will come to see, but they are standard bearers for 16-bit horror. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the Splatterhouse saga. So, here we have Splatterhouse for the PC Engine. Now, I'm not going to claim that this is arcade perfect, it isn't, but it's pretty damn close. You do get the full arcade attract sequence pretty much, which is quite atmospheric by the standards of the time, you know. And yeah, it's Splatterhouse. It's immediately recognisable as the arcade game, with its Jason-esque protagonist Rick, because that is the only way to describe him. He looks like Jason from the Friday the 13th films. It's some real classic 1980s copyright baiting from Namco here. But as you can see, the game is suitably gruesome, albeit perhaps not quite as gruesome as its reputation would have you believe. Yes, you're splatting zombies against the wall and bats, and there's corpses in chains with the guts hanging out, spewing toxic vomit. But there's definitely less of the old red stuff, shall we say. And of course, when people think about gruesome, gory video games, it tends to be blood that springs to mind. Now, the game plays like you'd expect it to play. As you can see, it's a simple left to right scrolling beat 'em up, and no, I'm not going to call it a belt scroller, which seems to have become popular in the last few years for some weird reason. They were never called that in my day. I won't call them that. It's a scrolling beat 'em up. And, you know, it is what it is. It's Splatterhouse. It's a challenging game. You know, and it's challenging deliberately. So it was an arcade machine. It was designed to steal your money. And that's what it did very successfully, as it happens. It's unfortunately, when you die, you do get set back quite a ways, but you know, not all the way to the start of the level. But yeah, it's an excellent conversion. You know, the next best you would get to playing the arcade version would be if you happen to be Japanese and you had an FM Towns. There's an excellent conversion of it for that. Yeah, otherwise this was as good as it got. There were no other home conversions released in the West. So yeah, Splatterhouse, I love it. It's a gruesome, great start to the series. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, things do get better, as we are about to see as we head into looking at Splatterhouse 2. And here we have Splatterhouse 2 on the Mega Drive or Genesis for our American cousins. Now, this was one of the first games I got for my Mega Drive. I went into my local independent video game retailer and saw this on the shelf, and I believe it cost me £12 to purchase at the time. Now, instantly you can see this game lives up to the legend of it being a gory game, that little bit more than the PC Engine version of the arcade original. This was developed with the Mega Drive in mind, and the developers at Namco decided to go that little bit more with the gore. Now, I do think this is a much better looking game than the PC Engine version of Splatterhouse 1. You know, there's more gore, everything looks that bit more gruesome. And, you know, once again, our hero Rick is absolutely not any way, shape or form ripping off Jason from Friday the 13th. Now, this is another incredibly difficult game. This first stage is actually pretty simple. It kind of lulls you into a false sense of security. It does get a lot more difficult. There's a password system in case you struggle with it, but it is still a ruddy difficult game. Now, I happen to think this game looks superb for the time, for its period of the Mega Drive. It looks great. There's some brilliant parallax effects in the backgrounds. The game looks suitably dark, dingy and gruesome. I mean, look at this. This is your first boss. There's blood, there's guts, there's gore, there's creepy monsters, there's slime. It just nails the aesthetic that you want from a game with the title Splatterhouse. It also sounds really good. Something I didn't mention about Splatterhouse 1, the music's pretty good. I think the music in this is outstanding. I actually do have it on my phone and I do listen to it on a regular basis. It's great fun. Again, rock hard, but darn good fun. And that to me is the key. It might be difficult, but it makes you come back time and time again. However, in terms of raw gameplay, the series would actually peak with the next entry that we're going to look at, Splatterhouse 3. So, Splatterhouse 3. Now, unfortunately for me, this game never actually received a release in the PAL market. It was released in Japan and the United States only. And I think that's a terrible shame, because this is the pinnacle of the side-scrolling Splatterhouse games. Now, there are some changes apparently immediately. First off, the game does look better. Rick has now changed slightly, but yes, he still looks like he's ripping off Jason, even though he isn't. Honest Gov. You get these lovely little cut sequences which use digitized photographs, and the actual side-scrolling gameplay has been altered slightly. You now can move into and out of the screen, so it's been modernized, taken away from that simple single plane scrolling into something that more resembles its contemporary peers like the Streets of Rage or the Final Fight series. One thing this game does do differently is its free roaming map. You have a level map and you have to work your way to the end of it, and you do have a timer. Now, the game doesn't end when that timer runs out, far from it, but it does change the way the game plays out. So there are multiple paths, multiple endings, depending on how well you do. Now, I think this is really quite a good looking game. It ups the gore standard somewhat. There's a little bit more blood, you know, a little bit more gore. And yeah, it's a great game. You also notice there are some other play mechanics at play here. There's a power meter, you collect those little crystal balls that are lying around, and eventually you can turn into Super Rick, which is pretty cool because that makes you incredibly powerful. And yeah, this is a great evolution of the series. Unfortunately, this will be the last Splatterhouse game we'd see until we got the, shall we say, troubled update for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but I think that's an entirely separate video on its own. Now, I love this game. I love all the Splatterhouse games, in fact, but I think this is probably becoming my favourite. It used to be Splatterhouse 2, it's now this. I just think this one plays better. Now, I love the Splatterhouse games. I'm not going to pretend in any way, shape or form that what I've said about them is objective. It's purely subjective. I think they're incredibly fun games and I love playing them. Yes, they're brutally difficult at times. Yes, they're not the best examples of the genre. That is still the Streets of Rage and Final Fight games, but they're good, spooky, scary, gruesome 16-bit fun. You know, these are games that you wanted to play as a 12, 13-year-old kid. You saw these on the shelf and you were like, I want that damn game. It looks awesome. And if you had the perseverance, it certainly was awesome. Now, I'd like to thank you for watching this video and putting up with me blathering on about some games that you probably don't care about. I've been Rob, this has been TG16 It's been Halloween Havoc 2023. If you like what you've seen, leave me a thumbs up, a comment. If you really like it, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, you know, there's more videos you can watch, and I hope you are enjoying yourself. So this is Rob saying so long for now.